I'm Tony Scott with bnetTV. We are here at Broadband World Forum in Amsterdam for 2012. I'm speaking with Cisco's Mr. David Ward. How are you today, sir?
Doing great, Tony. How are you?
Very well, and thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Love to be here.
Fantastic conference. Been so much chatter from last year's Broadband World Forum into this year's Broadband World Forum because of the sheer amount of consumption and increase in usage that we've seen over the next this last 12 months. But particularly, let's start off with where Cisco is within this ecosystem, and then what you're speaking about here at the conference.
Sure. So within the ecosystem, clearly we have a very, very large edge portfolio, both for BNGs, for CMTSs, for mobile gateways, and then of course extending into edge transport and wireless, of course. So we're really trying to extend the portfolio in all directions towards the edge and continue to allow it to feed that consumption.
And then what are you going to be speaking about?
So I'm going to be on a CTO panel with a number of CTOs from telecoms and MSOs, and so I am the token engineer. I'm the token technical guy on there with a bunch of executives. As you can see, I even forgot my jacket and tie.
That's a standard engineering uniform in California, so that's perfect.
Hey, thanks, man.
So let's talk about some of the hurdles that exist from a technological standpoint within the ecosystem right now that you're helping operators, carriers, and the like get over.
Sure. So a couple of things are really the focus on operation. And what I mean by this is that, the old debates of centralized versus decentralized edge and whatnot, and as well as the different the technology choices at the edge, really that's not what most of the operators are talking to us about. Instead, it's how can we actually manage these tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of devices out there, and how do we create the ability to have a universal access coming in over any technology that's possible. And so that the orchestration technology and the management technology to be able to run those devices is key. So from a centralized point of view, it can be using remote satellite control, which really reduces the operational overhead, of course. And then we're all talking about the introduction of programmable interfaces these days, and some call it SDN, but it's really more than just calling it a buzzword. It's really allowing us to have programmable interfaces that integrate with deployed equipment and integrate with the current deployment, management, and operations technology that's out there.
I think there's a lot of chatter for sure around how to reduce the costs in the core from a management perspective. If a router goes down, if a piece of equipment goes down, what happened? What do we have to send out? And do we have to send somebody out there to look at the system before we analyze the actual issue, or can we do that beforehand?
So I've been personally with a team back at Cisco, been working on this for a number of years with onboard fault logging, working with the services organization to enable both not only after the fault has happened to the analytics to understand what was there, but also predictive analytics on taking a look across the entire customer base that we have potentially, if they're geared up with our services organization, to understand if people have this type of equipment with certain type of, let's say, version of software or version of hardware, whether or not they could even potentially see problems so we can solve them before they actually get out there. Now, that all being said, the most critical piece of this programmatic interface business with reducing faults and understanding operations and reducing costs is actually getting information out of the network. That's the number one thing that I've been trying to talk about over the last couple of years or so, but it's the key piece, just getting the routing topology out, getting faults, getting events, getting everything within the current management systems that's critical.
So, one of the things that when I speak a lot to players within the ecosystem that are of your caliber, one of the issues that continues to come up is the lack of ubiquitous standards within the ecosystem for transport, which inevitably you need to be able to ascertain if there's going to be a problem. When you talked about predictiveness, how do you inevitably deploy a system, get it out there so that you can start using it and analyze the analytics to be able to get some upgrades into the system?
So what we focused on, because there really, as you already said, there really are no standards between routers and transport or switches and transport, as the case might be. And I've been attempting to predict this for about 12 years now, but I actually see those standards are now emerging, and we're seeing all the major players in both routing and transport coming together, whether it's GMPLS and creating uni interfaces and being able to deploy, analyze, get events out of transport systems onto routers, out of router systems onto transport. And we've taken our management platform and had to go multi-vendor because it's the state of the world, right? You need to be able to manage the kit that's in the ground, that's already there, as well as bring this into new technology.
And keep CapEx spending down at the exact same time while deploying something new, if not to mention new LTE backhaul, new small cell backhaul, Wi-Fi offload. I mean, we could continue to go on and on about different mechanisms of actions within the network, but that can't be easy.
So it's not easy, but as a guy who's been in protocol space for a long time, we're going to see the next wave. So the last wave, let's say, was BGP and VPNs and all that great stuff, and a lot of people made a lot of great careers out of it. But now it's between, say, the aggregation router and the RAN, and being able to make sure you aren't overwhelming some of this kit that's out there, trying to reduce CapEx, but eke more value out of those systems. And a lot of, for example, back to the programmatic interfaces for a second, these are software upgrades that you can do, which is really, really key.
Nice.
If you want to be able to find and use capacity that exists in a network and route traffic over that capacity, again, whether it's backhaul or it's in the core, that's the number one thing that I'm focusing on as well, trying to make networks more and more efficient such that costs can come down, but also you can get more services out of it.
Where do you think within the next 12 months between this Broadband World Forum and next year's Broadband World Forum, where we're going to see some of those hurdles or challenges exist, and how's Cisco going to help get over them?
So I think we are going to see new control planes and new protocols come out, and we're going to see, again, those protocols headed towards more efficient networks, and in particular, moving towards the edge, better management, control over those devices from your large centralized device where all those subscribers are terminating. So you can have ubiquity of access technology, but you can all manage that from a central location. I think that's going to be extremely useful. So what are we doing towards this? We're continuing to work, of course, in open standards of these protocols, drive the industry, and needless to say, the big Cisco machine is turned on. We're working absolutely to open up these interfaces and to build those control mechanisms as these happen at different layers in the network. Not the traditional OSI layers. Some people want to work directly with the elements themselves. Some folks want to work at the virtualization layer. Other folks want to move up to a resource orchestration layer. And it's really providing and understanding those different control layers and mechanisms where each customer wants to work with, and then where we can drive more value out of those networks by having them work with more and more of the stack.
It sounds like Cisco is listening to what its customers want and trying to provide a set of solutions that is going to be good for the ecosystem as a whole, from the edge to the core and back again.
Absolutely. So pretty much the way it works in the service provider division is we work hand in hand with our customers on the solutions and services they want to provide. It's great to talk about technology. You and I could sit here and talk about really cool bits, bytes, flags, and that go on in protocols all day, but to a provider, they just want to know the solution, and our goal is to be able to deploy those and not necessarily just talk about the protocol or whatever the case might be.
Makes sense. Consumption is huge, and if the end user can't get their data, they don't care what happens in between.
Yeah, exactly right. The other thing, as I mentioned before, of getting data out of the network, it's a common theme that you've heard about, that there's intelligence in the network. So we're trying to get this information out about the telemetry of a user, if you want to think of it this way, in a broadband space. It's not just identity. It's not just what device are they coming in on, although that's certainly part of it. It's where are they within the topology? What is the bandwidth capability that they can get out of their devices, out of their network, and then tie that directly to services and the ability for a service provider to add more value over those broadband links.
Increasing ARPU is the end game for everybody.
Of course it is. And the flexibility that needs to be enabled, I think that's going to be the next big wave, and I'm really excited about trying to build it.
David, thank you very much for taking the opportunity to speak with us here today at the conference. I hope we get a chance for you to update again in the future.
Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I've been speaking with Cisco's Mr. David Ward here at Broadband World Forum in Amsterdam for 2012. And I am Tony Sklar with bnetTV.